Rise of the European Emperor by Taishan Laonyo.
Chapter 411 The Spanish Royal Scandal. Jim, along with his men, happily left the Kingdom of Navarre with a single dose of the chronic poison, Cantrera, and rushed to the port of Bilbao, ready to return by boat. The reason why he was so happy was that Marin had promised him that if the mission was completed successfully, Marin would personally name him James Bond and grant him the ace title of the spy department of 007. In addition, the title of a knight is also inevitable. In the spy department, Marin implemented a competition system. Among them, Marin stipulated that whoever has the title of 007 is the ace spy. When other spies see him, they must salute. Of course, Kohler, the boss of the spies, does not need to. Marin gave Jim the very loud name, James Bond, which actually placed high hopes on him. You know, in the heart of Marin, a traverser, Uncle Bond is omnipotent. However, no one understands this stock in this era, so Marin can only be happy by himself. Jim is also happy. After all, he is also a noble with a surname. However, he didn't know that Marin planned to promote surnames in an all-round way after the world was stable, so as to facilitate the identification of people. Until now, Marin has not promoted ID cards. Why? It's not easy. Nimad, there are several serfs named John and Charlie in a village, and they have no surnames. How can the registration personnel identify them? If you shout, John from village A, several serfs will agree. How should I fill in the ID card? Fortunately, serfs in this era cannot leave the manor at will. Otherwise, the streets are full of surnames, and people will be confused. Therefore, if you want to have an ID card system, you must distinguish them by surnames. Otherwise, just looking at the certificate will make you confused. You can imagine a scene: a policeman investigates the household registration and asks, name, place of origin. Officer, I am John from village A. Get out. There are more than a dozen Johns in village A, which one are you? So, Marin plans to promote surnames in the future to distinguish everyone. Of course, that will have to wait until the war subsides. With war raging, where is the time to promote surnames? On the Iberian Peninsula, it is not just Jim and his group that can change history. In the royal palace in Lisbon, Portugal, an incident that can be called a scandal of the Spanish royal family also occurred. Although the incident took place in the royal palace in Lisbon, Portugal, the two protagonists of the incident were both Spanish princesses, the eldest Princess Isabella and the third Princess Maria of Aragon. As for the specific process of the incident, Princess Maria of Aragon, as the sister-in-law, ran to Lisbon, in the name of visiting her sister, but ran to her brother-in-law Manuel I to roll the sheets. Then, Queen Isabella, who was pregnant, saw this scene and fainted. Then, Queen Isabella gave birth prematurely, but she didn't make it, and both mother and child died. Princess Maria of Aragon was 23 years old, and it stands to reason that she should have married long ago. However, she was dissatisfied with the Duke husband arranged by her parents, so she ran to the convent to hide. Because she thought that the other person's title was too low. There was also comparison between sisters. Princess Maria's eldest sister married the King of Portugal and became the queen. The second sister Juana also married Philip, the only son of Maximilian I, the Holy Roman Emperor. In the future, Juana is likely to become the queen of the Holy Roman Empire, which is even more glorious. Even the younger sister Catherine married Arthur, the crown prince of the Kingdom of England. Although her husband died early, she was soon engaged to the new crown Prince Henry. This made Princess Maria very dissatisfied. Originally, Princess Isabella had a difficult delivery in 1498 and almost died. At that time, Spain and Portugal were considering replacing Princess Isabella with Princess Maria to become the Queen of the Kingdom of Portugal. However, Princess Isabella was affected by the butterfly effect of Marin's time travel and survived. So Maria, who originally planned to become the Queen of Portugal, failed to achieve her goal. However, she was unwilling to give up, and she actually hooked up with Manuel I and got together. Later, Princess Maria went to Lisbon to have an affair with her brother-in-law many times under the pretext of visiting her sister. If Isabella I and Ferdinand II forced her to marry, she would hide in the convent and clamor to be a nun. Coincidentally, Ferdinand II and Isabella I were both devout Catholics and did not dare to mess around in the convent. Moreover, they were also afraid that Maria would really become a nun. So, the matter was delayed. Originally, Princess Isabella, the Queen of Portugal, was pregnant again, which was a happy event worth celebrating in Portugal. So, Princess Maria went to Lisbon again under the name of visiting her sister to have a tryst with her brother-in-law. Unfortunately, this affair was caught on the spot by Queen Isabella, who was about to give birth. If it was another woman who had an affair with her husband, Isabella, as the queen, might have directly ordered the woman to be beaten to death. But when she saw that the mistress who was having an affair with her husband was actually her own sister, Isabella couldn't bear the blow and fainted on the spot. Then, she suffered premature birth and dystocia, resulting in 2 deaths. Because Queen Isabella was unconscious, she couldn't pull the little prince out after the premature birth. In the end, the little prince was suffocated to death inside and stuck near the exit. However, after learning that her sister died of dystocia, Princess Maria had no sadness, but was excited. She had been a spare tire for several years and could finally become the queen. In fact, Maria of Aragon was not a good person. Originally, after her sister Princess Isabella died, she replaced her sister and became the Queen of Portugal. Originally, Princess Elizabeth's son Miguel survived. However, 2 years later, he unfortunately died young. It is hard to say that this was not Maria's murder. Because if Miguel was not, the son born by Princess Maria would not be able to become king. After the news of her sister's death in dystocia was confirmed, Maria of Aragon quickly led the team back home. After returning to Spain, Maria of Aragon told her men to prepare her dowry and found her father. She said to him excitedly, "Father, my sister Isabella is dead. Let me replace her as the Queen of Portugal." Ferdinand too was immediately confused, and then realized, how come my eldest daughter died? In addition, third daughter, why are you so excited? Did you know that your sister died? You are not sad at all, but excited instead. Chapter 4:12 on the importance of marriage. Although Ferdinand too was somewhat puzzled by the abnormal behavior of his third daughter Maria, after consultation with the Parliament of the Kingdom of Castile, he still agreed to marry the third Princess Maria to King Manuel I of Portugal as his successor. Because if Manuel I married a princess from another country as his successor, then Princess Isabella's only son Miguel, who was only 6 years old, would probably be killed by his stepmother. Instead of this, it would be better to marry Princess Maria as a successor. A sister as a stepmother would not harm Prince Miguel, right? But they were all wrong. In fact, after knowing that she could replace her sister as the Queen of Portugal, Princess Maria had already killed her sister's only son, Prince Miguel. Of course, the premise is that she can leave a boy first. If she can't leave a boy, but kills Miguel, it's not worth it. After all, it's impossible for a father to be unaware that his stepmother killed his ex-wife's child. If she fails to give birth to a boy, she will kill Miguel and make the Portuguese royal family extinct. Maybe Manuel I will kill her. Moreover, Princess Maria was also a smart person. She believed that before taking action, she must show her kindness and take care of Prince Miguel meticulously, until her son was born. Miguel, as a stumbling block, could be removed. In fact, in history, Princess Maria took action against Miguel very early. Although he married into Portugal in October 1500. Prince Miguel was finished in August, but since Princess Isabella died in 1498, Princess Maria had long been the quasi-queen of the Kingdom of Portugal, and both sides had already started to make relevant preparations. The reason why the wedding was postponed to October 1500 was because of the hostility and disputes between the two countries. It was mainly due to the interests of India, and the two countries were very unhappy. Therefore, the wedding was postponed. But in fact, Princess Maria had long been regarded as the quasi-queen of Portugal, and had already reached into the Portuguese royal palace. She bribed the maids who were married with her sister in the past, and asked them to let the young Prince Miguel die prematurely before her wedding began. In this way, when the prince dies and she marries him, no one will suspect that it was her own doing. So, Princess Maria is not a good person. Moreover, after seeing that her second sister Juani's son Charles V was about to inherit the two great empires of Holy Roman Empire and Spain, she immediately tried every means to marry her daughter Isabella to him and became the empress of the empire. In fact, Charles V suffered a great loss in this marriage. The Austrian relatives of the Habsburg family originally planned to let Charles V marry Princess Anne of the Kingdom of Bohemia. Because when Maximilian I was fighting with Vladislaus II for Hungary, they had an agreement that once the Kingdom of Bohemia died out, the Kingdom of Bohemia and the Kingdom of Hungary, including the Silesia and Moravia regions under the control of the Kingdom of Bohemia, would be inherited by the Habsburg family. In order to realize the dream of annexing the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, Silesia and Moravia, the Austrian relatives of the Habsburg family supported the marriage between Charles V and Anne of Bohemia. Although Vladislaus II had an only son, Lajos, he was in poor health. The members of the Austrian Habsburg family were looking forward to Lajos II's early death or extinction. In that case, the territory of the Habsburg family could expand to neighboring regions such as the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, Silesia and Moravia. However, due to pressure from the Spanish royal family, Charles V married Princess Isabella, the daughter of Princess Maria. Then, Charles V's brother Ferdinand married Anne of Bohemia. This laid the seeds for the dissolution of the union of the Holy Roman Empire and the Spanish Empire. Lajos too did die, and the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Duchy of Silesia and the Duchy of Moravia did all belong to the Habsburg family. However, it belonged to Ferdinand, not Charles V. So the problem came. Charles V wanted his son Philip II to inherit the Holy Roman Empire and the Spanish Empire at the same time. However, after inheriting the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Duchy of Silesia and the Duchy of Moravia, Charles V's younger brother Ferdinand became more confident and planned to compete for the throne of the Holy Roman Empire. Moreover, because he was afraid that Charles V's son Philip II would suppress the German principalities like his father when he had both the Holy Roman Empire and Spain. Therefore, the 7 electors chose Ferdinand as the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire and the King of Germany. Even if Charles V was willing to give up the real power of the German king and only let Philip II have the title of emperor, the 7 electors refused to agree. In this way, the alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, which had beaten France to a pulp and captured the King of France, had to be dissolved because of a wrong marriage choice. If it were not for Princess Maria's operation to send her daughter to be the queen, but instead listened to the advice of the Austrian Habsburg family and let Charles V marry Anne of Bohemia, then the strong alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain would continue to exist, and Germany would be able to achieve actual unification. After all, Spain's gold and silver income in the Americas is no joke. After the dissolution of the alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, the Habsburg family of the Holy Roman Empire was in a difficult situation, while the Spanish Habsburg family continued to dominate until the failure of the 80 Years' War and the 30 Years' War, when it began to decline. It can be seen that the strength of a country is not only related to the combat effectiveness of the army, but also has a considerable relationship with financial resources. At the beginning, Spain had money, but insufficient population and limited manpower. Although the German region was poor, it had sufficient manpower. Moreover, the Germans have a tradition of martial arts and good combat effectiveness. The result of the strong alliance between the two is that Charles V beat France to a pulp and forced France to form an alliance with the pagan Turkey to distract the attention of the Holy Roman Empire. If Charles V had not been unlucky and happened to catch up with the Reformation War and spent a lot of effort to deal with Protestantism, perhaps the German principalities would have been completely unified by him. In fact, the reason why the Reformation came about has to be mentioned in the name of a smart man, Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony, who was the one who plotted against Marin. The reason why Frederick III sheltered Martin Luther and supported him in the Reformation was actually to muddy the waters of love of Germany. As long as the German region was in a mess because of religious issues, Charles V would not have the energy to clean up the principalities. In fact, he did succeed and involved the German region in a long and tragic religious war. Moreover, although Frederick III supported Martin Luther, he hid it so well that he was not punished. Unfortunately, his successor was not competitive and too upright, so he was exposed. Then, after losing the religious war, the title of Elector of Saxony fell to George's lineage, allowing Moritz, the descendant of silly George, to take advantage of it and reunify Saxony. In fact, Marin had been hesitating whether to let his son Caesar marry Princess Anne of the Kingdom of Bohemia. Because his son and Princess Anne are about the same age. Moreover, he had a good relationship with the brothers of the Jagiellon dynasty. Although his title was a little lower, as long as he made good use of Prince Sigismund, it was not impossible to achieve a marriage with King Vladislav II of Bohemia. And if Lajos II died in battle as in history, then the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Principality of Silesia and the Principality of Moravia would belong to his son. However, Marin thought about it and realized that Lajos II might not die in battle due to the butterfly effect brought about by his time travel. If that were the case, Caesar's marriage to Anne of Bohemia would be in vain. Therefore, Marin finally gave up the plan to marry the Kingdom of Bohemia. Because that was full of uncertainty. As for the marriage with Edward, as long as Henry VII could be defeated, it would be stable. Because the French gave Edward's wife Anna contraceptives. In the case that Edward only had one daughter, Margaret, as long as Edward seized England and married Margaret, it would be equivalent to obtaining Britain. Compared with Britain and Bohemia, Hungary and other places, which one is more cost-effective? Marin of course chose Britain. Don't look at the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, plus Silesia and Moravia, which are larger than England and have a larger population. However, Hungary is a pit. Hungary is located on the border with Ottoman Turkey. Inheriting Hungary is equivalent to inheriting the war with Ottoman Turkey. Charles V failed to reach Paris because of the excessive pressure from Turkey on the Hungarian border. The Balkans have long been a powder keg, and wars have never stopped. Moreover, these areas are not by the sea and cannot develop maritime trade. Therefore, although the territory is large and the population is large, it is actually not as affordable as Britain. After all, Britain is suitable for the development of great navigation, and it has abundant coal and iron, which is much more promising than those four regions. After thinking again and again, Marin gave up the plan to let Caesar marry Anne of Bohemia. It was a pity that he did not have a second legitimate child. Robert was an illegitimate child. Otherwise, he would have tried to form an alliance with Anne of Bohemia. After all, the four countries were too large, and with Austria, they would become the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Chapter 4:13, Can't Stop. Although Ferdinand II was somewhat puzzled by the abnormal behavior of his third daughter Maria, after consultation with the Parliament of the Kingdom of Castile, he still agreed to marry the third Princess Maria to King Manuel I of Portugal as his successor. Because if Manuel I married a princess from another country as his successor, then Princess Isabella's only son Miguel, who was only 6 years old, would probably be killed by his stepmother. Instead of this, it would be better to marry Princess Maria as a successor. A sister as a stepmother would not harm Prince Miguel, right? But they were all wrong. In fact, after knowing that she could replace her sister as the Queen of Portugal, Princess Maria had already killed her sister's only son, Prince Miguel. Of course, the premise is that she can leave a boy first. If she can't leave a boy, but kills Miguel, it's not worth it. After all, it's impossible for a father to be unaware that his stepmother killed his ex-wife's child. If she fails to give birth to a boy, she will kill Miguel and make the Portuguese royal family extinct. Maybe Manuel I will kill her. Moreover, Princess Maria was also a smart person. She believed that before taking action, she must show her kindness and take care of Prince Miguel meticulously, until her son was born. Miguel, as a stumbling block, could be removed. In fact, in history, Princess Maria took action against Miguel very early. Although he married into Portugal in October 1500. Prince Miguel was finished in August, but since Princess Isabella died in 1498, Princess Maria had long been the quasi-queen of the Kingdom of Portugal, and both sides had already started to make relevant preparations. The reason why the wedding was postponed to October 1500 was because of the hostility and disputes between the two countries. It was mainly due to the interests of India, and the two countries were very unhappy. Therefore, the wedding was postponed. But in fact, Princess Maria had long been regarded as the quasi-queen of Portugal, and had already reached into the Portuguese royal palace. She bribed the maids who were married with her sister in the past, and asked them to let the young Prince Miguel die prematurely before her wedding began. In this way, when the prince dies and she marries him, no one will suspect that it was her own doing. So, Princess Maria is not a good person. Moreover, after seeing that her second sister Juani's son Charles V was about to inherit the two great empires of Holy Roman Empire and Spain, she immediately tried every means to marry her daughter Isabella to him and became the empress of the empire. In fact, Charles V suffered a great loss in this marriage. The Austrian relatives of the Habsburg family originally planned to let Charles V marry Princess Anne of the Kingdom of Bohemia. Because when Maximilian I was fighting with Vladislas II for Hungary, they had an agreement that once the Kingdom of Bohemia died out, the Kingdom of Bohemia and the Kingdom of Hungary, including the Silesia and Moravia regions under the control of the Kingdom of Bohemia, would be inherited by the Habsburg family. In order to realize the dream of annexing the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, Silesia and Moravia, the Austrian relatives of the Habsburg family supported the marriage between Charles V and Anne of Bohemia. Although Vladislas II had an only son, Lajos, he was in poor health. The members of the Austrian Habsburg family were looking forward to Lajos II's early death or extinction. In that case, the territory of the Habsburg family could expand to neighboring regions such as the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, Silesia and Moravia. However, due to pressure from the Spanish royal family, Charles V married Princess Isabella, the daughter of Princess Maria. Then, Charles V's brother Ferdinand married Anne of Bohemia. This laid the seeds for the dissolution of the union of the Holy Roman Empire and the Spanish Empire. Lajos II did die, and the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Duchy of Silesia and the Duchy of Moravia did all belong to the Habsburg family. However, it belonged to Ferdinand, not Charles V. So the problem came. Charles V wanted his son Philip II to inherit the Holy Roman Empire and the Spanish Empire at the same time. However, after inheriting the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Duchy of Silesia and the Duchy of Moravia, Charles V's younger brother Ferdinand became more confident and planned to compete for the throne of the Holy Roman Empire. Moreover, because he was afraid that Charles V's son Philip II would suppress the German principalities like his father when he had both the Holy Roman Empire and Spain. Therefore, the 7 electors chose Ferdinand as the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire and the King of Germany. Even if Charles V was willing to give up the real power of the German king and only let Philip II have the title of emperor, the 7 electors refused to agree. In this way, the alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, which had beaten France to a pulp and captured the King of France, had to be dissolved because of a wrong marriage choice. If it were not for Princess Maria's operation to send her daughter to be the queen, but instead listen to the advice of the Austrian Habsburg family and let Charles V marry Anne of Bohemia, then the strong alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain would continue to exist, and Germany would be able to achieve actual unification. After all, Spain's gold and silver income in the Americas is no joke. After the dissolution of the alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and Spain, the Habsburg family of the Holy Roman Empire was in a difficult situation, while the Spanish Habsburg family continued to dominate until the failure of the 80 Years' War and the 30 Years' War, when it began to decline. It can be seen that the strength of a country is not only related to the combat effectiveness of the army, but also has a considerable relationship with financial resources. At the beginning, Spain had money, but insufficient population and limited manpower. Although the German region was poor, it had sufficient manpower. Moreover, the Germans have a tradition of martial arts and good combat effectiveness. The result of the strong alliance between the two is that Charles V beat France to a pulp and forced France to form an alliance with the pagan Turkey to distract the attention of the Holy Roman Empire. If Charles V had not been unlucky and happened to catch up with the Reformation War and spent a lot of effort to deal with Protestantism, perhaps the German principalities would have been completely unified by him. In fact, the reason why the Reformation came about has to be mentioned in the name of a smart man, Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony, who was the one who plotted against Marin. The reason why Frederick III sheltered Martin Luther and supported him in the Reformation was actually to muddy the waters of love of Germany. As long as the German region was in a mess because of religious issues, Charles V would not have the energy to clean up the principalities. In fact, he did succeed and involved the German region in a long and tragic religious war. Moreover, although Frederick III supported Martin Luther, he hid it so well that he was not punished. Unfortunately, his successor was not competitive and too upright, so he was exposed. Then, after losing the religious war, the title of Elector of Saxony fell to George's lineage, allowing Moritz, the descendant of silly George, to take advantage of it and reunify Saxony. In fact, Marin had been hesitating whether to let his son Caesar marry Princess Anne of the Kingdom of Bohemia. Because his son and Princess Anne are about the same age. Moreover, he had a good relationship with the brothers of the Jagiellon dynasty. Although his title was a little lower, as long as he made good use of Prince Sigismund, it was not impossible to achieve a marriage with King Vladislaus II of Bohemia. And if Lajos II died in battle as in history, then the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Principality of Silesia and the Principality of Moravia would belong to his son. However, Marin thought about it and realized that Lajos II might not die in battle due to the butterfly effect brought about by his time travel. If that were the case, Caesar's marriage to Anne of Bohemia would be in vain. Therefore, Marin finally gave up the plan to marry the Kingdom of Bohemia. Because that was full of uncertainty. As for the marriage with Edward, as long as Henry VII could be defeated, it would be stable. Because the French gave Edward's wife Anna contraceptives. In the case that Edward only had one daughter, Margaret, as long as Edward seized England and married Margaret, it would be equivalent to obtaining Britain. Compared with Britain and Bohemia, Hungary and other places, which one is more cost-effective? Marin of course chose Britain. Don't look at the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, plus Silesia and Moravia, which are larger than England and have a larger population. However, Hungary is a pit. Hungary is located on the border with Ottoman Turkey. Inheriting Hungary is equivalent to inheriting the war with Ottoman Turkey. Charles V failed to reach Paris because of the excessive pressure from Turkey on the Hungarian border. The Balkans have long been a powder keg, and wars have never stopped. Moreover, these areas are not by the sea and cannot develop maritime trade. Therefore, although the territory is large and the population is large, it is actually not as affordable as Britain. After all, Britain is suitable for the development of great navigation, and it has abundant coal and iron, which is much more promising than those 4 regions. After thinking again and again, Marin gave up the plan to let Caesar marry Anne of Bohemia. Marin was very depressed when he thought that the 4 particularly large territories of the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Principality of Silesia and the Principality of Moravia would miss out on his family. In the evening, Marin tossed Angela hard and asked for it several times. After Angela finished, she was panting and pestering Marin, and asked in confusion, "Dear, why are you so excited today? I almost tossed people to death." Marin did not hide his thoughts from him. When Angela heard it, her eyes also lit up. You know, those are 4 large countries. Moreover, the Kingdom of Bohemia is the head of the 4 secular electors of the Holy Roman Empire. So Angela said with shining eyes, or, let's let Caesar and of Bohemia marry. That's the King of Bohemia. After that, he will be an elector. Marin shook his head, not to mention that the Kingdom of Hungary is a powder keg region. Just not being close to the sea and not suitable for the development of great navigation is far worse than Britain. Moreover, his territory is only separated from Britain by the North Sea, not far away. If he gets the Kingdom of Bohemia, the Kingdom of Hungary, Silesia and Moravia, not to mention the wars over there, it is too far away from East Frisia, separated by thousands of mountains and rivers, and difficult to manage, which is also a big problem. However, Marin did not tell Angela about Britain's plan to prevent Angela from being careless and accidentally telling it out. Then, Angela thought that it would be nice to let her second son become the king and elector of Bohemia. So, she took the initiative to pounce on him and entangled Marin. Marin said with a smile, "It is impossible to get pregnant with a woman on top and a man on the bottom. Because your mouth is facing down, the liquid flows directly. Then you are on top and I am on the bottom. I want to have another son to be the king and elector of Bohemia," Angela said stubbornly. Marin was speechless, but he still pressed on him to give face. The next morning, Marin felt a sore waist and a severe physical deficit. While rubbing his waist, he muttered, "No wonder the emperors of China died early. Kong Matsi was the emperor for 61 years, which is considered a very long reign. Moreover, that was because he ascended the throne at the age of 8. That's not right. His grandson Qianlong was also very wild and coquettish. Not only did he have a lot of women in the palace, but he also had Rome Mama, Xia Yuha, by Daming Lake outside. Why could he live to be 89 years old? Could it be that he had a secret recipe passed down from his ancestors? Well, we still have to send someone to Daming to find such a secret recipe. Anyway, Ma Lin found that after he traveled through time, except for a better memory in his brain, his body did not get any stronger. He can't beat 10 people alone, nor can he have sex with several women in one night. In short, he still has a normal body. It's just that after long-term training in martial arts, his body is stronger than that of ordinary people. As a normal man, if he does it too often at night, it is inevitable that he will have back pain and weak steps. Rubbing his waist and stepping on the space walk, not the dance space walk of MJ, but the light space walk of Armstrong, which looks like the kind of space walk that looks like the authentic space walk, Marin came to the office in the front yard of the palace and began to deal with important documents. Soon, Geoffrey suddenly came to Marin's office and invited him to attend the road completion ceremony. Road completion ceremony? Such a small matter also requires me to attend? Marin was very surprised. Geoffrey was actually a little surprised, so he asked back, "Duke, didn't you ask me to pay special attention to the construction of the volcanic ash, cement, road?" Volcanic ash? Marin was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly reacted, it turned out to be a cement road. "Okay, I'll go right away, you go and prepare the carriage and guards." Soon, the 4-wheel spring shock-absorbing carriage was ready, and Marin and Geoffrey got into the carriage with high protection, which was filled with tinplate outside the carriage. The carriage was surrounded by fierce guards wearing breastplate armor. Under the escort of a large number of guards, Marin's carriage quickly arrived at the edge of the cement road outside the north gate. After getting off the car, Marin saw a neat and flat rural cement road, which was similar to the cement road in Marin's hometown in later generations. This is a standard rural cement road with a width of 3.5 meters and a thickness of 20 centimeters. Moreover, on the cement road surface, Marin asked people to cut a knife every few meters, which was said to be to prevent the road surface from expanding or shrinking. In fact, the fly ash cement used by Marin to pave the cement road is a type of cement with a low expansion coefficient and good crack resistance. It is also thanks to Marin that he has a salt boiling base, otherwise, there would not be so much fly ash supply. In later generations, ordinary cement roads used the simplest silicate cement. Only reservoirs and coastal defense, river defense and other projects will use cement with good waterproof and anti-corrosion properties such as fly ash cement. Paving with fly ash cement, and paving a rural cement road that is only 3.5 meters wide, is also possible without cutting. Of course, it is better after cutting. In addition, the cement road surface is not smooth. Otherwise, on a rainy day, people can skate on the cement road surface. On the cement road surface, the construction workers used thin wires to play many shallow bars. Although the depth is very shallow, it makes the friction coefficient of the cement road surface increase a lot, but compared with the dirt road, the friction is not high. The most important thing is that with these shallow bars, the cement road surface will not slip even if it rains. In fact, this cement road was repaired more than a month ago. However, the cement road surface needs to be air-dried. Therefore, after waiting for more than a month, when the cement road surface was completely dry and hard, Geoffrey was invited to inspect it. Geoffrey remembered that Marin had said that this road was very important and asked him to follow up in person. Obviously, this road is very important to Marin, so he invited Marin to attend the road completion ceremony. Well, this kind of ceremony was also invented by Marin. The so-called road completion ceremony is actually to let Marin unveil the plaque and then personally ride a carriage to run back and forth on the road surface. Ma Lin happily let his carriage go on this small cement road that was only more than 3 kilometers long. After getting on the cement road, the carriage quickly accelerated. On such a flat cement road, the carriage ran very fast. Later, after the car speeded up, the horse basically didn't need to use too much strength, and it ran on the road directly by inertia. Even if the horse wanted to stop, it was pushed forward by the carriage behind. If the horse pulling the carriage could speak at this time, the horse would definitely say, "Damn it, I can't stop at all." The horse ran desperately. If it slowed down, the carriage behind would still push the horse forward, as if it would not let the horse slow down, which made the horse very depressed, so it kept running. Fortunately, under inertia, the horse did not pull the carriage too hard at this time. Unlike those mountain roads with high resistance, the carriage could not move without the horse pulling. Soon, the more than 3 kilometers of cement road came to an end. However, at this time, the speed of the horse and the carriage reached a very high value. The horse wanted to stop, but was held back by the carriage and continued to move forward. Fortunately, European carriages have brakes. The driver saw that the road had ended and quickly braked manually. The brake was on the left, a simple lever principle. The front was a long arm, extending to the left-hand side of the driver. And the back was a short arm, with a very high friction object at the top. There was no rubber at the moment, and the friction object was made of leather. The driver raised his long arm with his left hand, and the leather friction pad was pressed against the wheel, rubbing against the wheel, trying to stop the wheel by friction. However, unlike the brake pads on the inside of the wheel rim in later generations, the brake pads at this time were actually on the outside of the wheel, and rubbed against the outside of the wheel. At the same time, the driver's right hand began to pull the reins to control the horse to stop. Unfortunately, the carriage was running too fast this time. Not only was it difficult for the horse to stop for a while due to inertia, but even the wheels also heard a very harsh brake sound. There was no way, who told the carriage to be too fast. Fortunately, there was no lake or cliff in front. After a distance on the dirt road, the carriage really stopped. The driver was so scared that he kept apologizing to Marin. After all, this was a serious mistake. Marin did not blame the driver, because he knew that people of this era underestimated the convenience of cement roads. So, it was okay to make some mistakes. Besides, he didn't have any problems. At this time, Marin's attention had been completely attracted by this rural cement road that was hundreds of years ahead of the times. Just now, he clearly felt that the carriage had reached the highest speed in history. Although it could not catch up with the cars of later generations, it could definitely catch up with electric vehicles. In the previous life, the second-hand electric vehicle that Marin rode could reach a speed of 26 yards. This time, the carriage was almost as fast as an electric bicycle on the cement road. In this era, even on the relatively flat Roman road, the speed of the carriage rarely exceeded 20 kilometers per hour. That is because there are uneven areas between the stones on the Roman road, which increases the friction and causes a small vibration of the carriage. Therefore, the speed of the carriage generally does not exceed 20 kilometers per hour. Of course, if you encounter a Ferrari-level draft horse and run hard, you can also break this speed, but it is rare. But on the rural cement road, even an ordinary carriage can easily run at a speed of more than 20 kilometers per hour. The only problem is the brake problem. Marin planned to have people study the simple foot-operated brake system of later generations, so that the coachman would not brake with his left hand and pull the reins with his right hand, but he would not be able to do both well. Moreover, Marin found that after running 3 kilometers, the horse pulling the carriage was not tired at all and looked very energetic. It is no wonder that on the cement road, after the speed of the carriage was increased, the inertia of the carriage, plus the small friction coefficient of the road surface, made the force required for the horse to pull the carriage much smaller. On the contrary, when the horse wants to slow down, it is often pushed forward by the inertia of the carriage. Therefore, when the horse pulls the carriage on the cement road, it saves a lot of effort than on the dirt road and the crossroad. In this way, the continuous driving distance of the carriage is much longer than on other roads. In this way, the average daily distance of the carriage will also be greatly increased. Even reaching twice is not a myth. An ordinary carriage can run 100 kilometers a day on an ordinary road, which is amazing. Because after running for an hour or so, the carriage has to stop and rest. It is not for people to rest, but for the horses to rest. Otherwise, the horses will be exhausted to death. In ancient Rome, on the Roman road, a post carriage could only run 160 kilometers in 24 hours, and it had to rest and change horses in the middle of the journey. Otherwise, the horses could not bear it. On the concrete road, the horses pulling the carriage exert less effort, and the rest period is longer, so they can naturally run farther. If the draft horses are in better physical condition, it is not a myth to pull the carriage 200 kilometers on the concrete road in a day. If it is a two-horse carriage, the speed should be faster. Of course, this is a passenger vehicle, and it is not strenuous for horses to pull it. If it is a truck with a large load, the speed will be much slower. After all, the pulling power of a horse is far less than that of a machine. The average car has more than 100 horsepower, which is equivalent to hundreds of horses. It was a pity that he did not have a second legitimate child. Robert was an illegitimate child. Otherwise, he would have tried to form an alliance with Anne of Bohemia. After all, the four countries were too large, and with Austria, they would become the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Chapter 4:14 The idea of founding a religious university. Marin was very satisfied with the condition of this cement road. Now, Marin has a carriage with simple ball bearings installed. In addition to the flat cement road, as long as the load is not heavy, running more than 200 kilometers a day is not a problem at all. On the cement road, Marin tried to use a carriage without bearings. When it was empty, the difference was not particularly large. But after loading, the heavier the cargo, the slower the carriage without bearings. Because the friction between the wheels and the axles will become greater and greater as the cargo increases. The oiled ball bearings perfectly avoid this problem. Even if loaded, as long as it is not too heavy, the speed difference with the empty load is not particularly large. In addition, the squeaky, friction sound of the wheels and axles of the carriage without bearings is really too harsh. The spring shock-absorbing carriage promoted by Marin for the nobles not only has good shock absorption, but also makes no sound when driving because ball bearings are installed on the axles. In particular, on cement roads, the spring shock-absorbing effect is almost useless. Because there is no vibration at all on such a flat road. The ball bearings, on the other hand, fully avoided the harsh friction sound, making the carriage relatively quiet. However, because the ball bearings used butter as a lubricant, they had to be replaced frequently, and the cost was a bit high. Fortunately, Marin now had whale oil as a substitute, otherwise, the carriages used butter as a lubricant, and the cost was indeed a bit high. Moreover, the common people of this era generally lacked oil and water, so how could butter be wasted like this? Kohler, who was in charge of financial expenditures, told Marin that the cost of building cement roads was much lower than that of paving with bricks. Moreover, Marin considered that if the cement plant was moved to Corner Brook on Newfoundland, the cost would be greatly reduced. Why? Because the limestone mine on Newfoundland was his own, and he only had to pay the labor costs for mining. Unlike now, his own limestone still needed to be purchased in large quantities in Hamburg, and Hamburg merchants made a lot of profits. As long as the cost of cement was low enough, Marin could build cement roads on a large scale and create a well-connected transportation system. Because there were no large trucks in Europe now, they were all horse-drawn carriages. Therefore, it is completely feasible to promote cement roads in Europe. However, if it is a main road, even if it is a two-way one-way road, it must be at least 4 meters wide, preferably 5 to 6 meters wide. This is because the carriage itself is very narrow. In the end, Marin decided that in the future, all main roads would be built with 5-meter wide cement roads. As for branch roads, 3.5-meter wide rural cement roads would be built. Moreover, the thickness of the 5-meter wide main road cement road is the same as that of the rural cement road, which is 20 centimeters. This is because there are no large trucks weighing more than 10 tons in this era, and the carriages only weigh 1 or 2 tons, so it is almost impossible to overturn the 20-centimeter thick cement road. In the case of enough, Marin also tries to save cement. After all, the industry is underdeveloped in this era, and there are no mechanical equipment such as rollers. If you get too much cement, you still have to deal with it manually, which is very inefficient. In the case of enough, a 5-meter wide cement road is absolutely ahead of this era, and it is wirelessly coquettish. Even for a large army of people walking, a 5-meter wide cement road is enough. However, Marin plans to cut all the cement roads in the middle when repairing the 5-meter wide cement road. This is to prevent the cement road surface from expanding and contracting due to heat and cold. Although the fly ash cement that Marin is using now has good thermal expansion and contraction performance. However, after the popularization of cement, fly ash cement cannot be used all the time. After all, the source of fly ash is limited. Ordinary cement roads must be the most common silicate cement. The road surface paved with that kind of cement must be cut, otherwise the road surface will be easily damaged. Moreover, after the middle line of the road surface is cut, the cement road can also be divided into two parts, left and right, and then traffic rules are formulated. The left and right do not interfere with each other, which can greatly facilitate traffic. However, if Marin were to formulate traffic rules, he would definitely choose to drive on the right. Unlike the left-hand driving made by the British, it is awkward. Many people who have gone to the UK have responded that they are extremely uncomfortable with the traffic rules there. Moreover, there are no traffic rules in Europe now. It is easy for Marin to formulate a unified standard. In particular, Marin will conquer England in the future, and he decided that he must make the British accept the traffic rules of driving on the right. Otherwise, he will be fined. Taking advantage of the fact that spring plowing is over, Marin decided to let the construction team continue to build a cement road from Auric to Emdenport to facilitate transportation between the two cities. In the future, Marin also plans to build cement roads from Auric to Oldenburg and Münster. In this way, the transportation between several main cities is convenient and developed, which is also conducive to the rule and influence of these areas. The Qin dynasty and Rome respectively implemented the Qi-Dao and the Roman road in order to strengthen the control over such a large country. In fact, for the German region, cement roads are not so urgent. Because the German region is not large. In particular, Marin now only occupies a piece of land in the northwest corner of Germany. However, cement roads have a huge impact on America. America is too big. Without cement roads, you can't effectively rule and influence distant areas. Originally in history, the reason why the British divided 13 states on the east coast of North America, and each was not under the jurisdiction, was because of inconvenient transportation, which led to the 13 states being independent. This also laid the groundwork for the later federal system of the old United States. Marin prefers a centralized system because it can better exert the country's strength. Moreover, for the colonies, the locals are most afraid of losing control of the colonies. Therefore, in the colonies, centralization is more necessary. Otherwise, North America's independence from Britain is a model. Therefore, Marin has long thought about the ruling model of North America. All officials are sent from the local area. In the future, they will all be college students. Marin will set up a university to train college students with administrative capabilities. Then, they will be sent to various regions of the colonies, and local people will never be given the opportunity to get involved in the regime, even if they are descendants of immigrants. Do people in the colonies want to go into politics? Yes, but they must first go to college in their native land and brainwash for 4 years. Then, after returning to America, they are not allowed to serve in their hometowns. In this regard, we must learn from the hometown avoidance system of the Ming dynasty to avoid the formation of local township parties. As long as the local people do not form a group, then they are not a threat. In addition, weapons control is implemented on people in the colonies. They are allowed to have muskets, but they can only be inconvenient matchlock guns, and flintlocks and clockwork muskets are not allowed. In this way, the colonists were given the ability to hunt and their ability to resist was controlled. The North American colonies had too many muskets, and as a result, a bunch of militias gathered together to form the Continental Army. Marin must take precautions against this. It is better to let them be bullied by the Indians than to let them have strong military force. Otherwise, send troops to destroy them immediately. Moreover, as long as strict control is implemented, it is forbidden to import muskets and horses to the Indians. The Indians could not conquer the colonists' strongholds with muskets with bows and arrows. The musket is inconvenient on the battlefield in the wild and needs the cover of spearmen. But when defending the city, it is still very powerful and the effect is no worse than the flintlock. For this reason, after returning from the completion ceremony of the cement road, Marin locked himself in the office and began to formulate a plan to promote the construction of cement roads in the mainland and colonies. In addition, the colonial gun restriction bill is also being drafted. These are the needs of future rule and are also very important. Of course, more important than these 2 points is not to irritate the immigrants in the colonies. Therefore, when making future laws, we should not oppress the colonies too much, so as not to force the immigrants to rebel. In addition, it is very important to deceive the people in the colonies. Therefore, Marin decided to apply to the Holy See to establish a theology-based university in Auric. As for the name of the university, Marin decided to name it the Catholic University of Auric. Moreover, this school only teaches theology. The principal is naturally Bishop Taylor. Obviously, Marin is planning to let Bishop Taylor recruit more disciples. He doesn't ask for how good he is in religious studies, but he must teach them how to fool people. In the future, all graduates from this university will be parish priests in various churches. Even, they will be bishops in various districts in the future. Their task is to take advantage of Sunday worship to desperately promote the wisdom and bravery of Marin and his successors and the idea of divine right of kings to the people at home and in the colonies to ensure the rule of the Hoffman family. As long as it is not too bad, and timely funding for rescue when encountering disasters, the tragedy of the Ming dynasty can be avoided. With the hard work of Taylor's disciples, the possibility of rebellion in the colonies should be small. Of course, who dares to spread other sects in the country will be beheaded. Otherwise, the common people will do something as bad as killing the king if they are fooled by some guys from other sections. Among them, the most unlucky representative is Louis XVI. In fact, Louis XVI himself is a good man, and like Chongzhen, he is not a tyrant. But he exhausted the treasury in order to support American independence. In addition, France suffered natural disasters such as hail on the eve of the Great Revolution, just like the Ming dynasty, which led to an increase in bread prices. Therefore, under the instigation of liberals and Huguenot Protestants, Louis XVI was beheaded, which was extremely tragic. Therefore, Marin would use this religious university to vigorously cultivate Taylor's disciples and grandchildren to advocate for himself. At the same time, develop secret police, arrest anyone with different religious opinions, kill them when caught, and hire professional writers to vilify these people and occupy the commanding heights of public opinion. The current pope is Marin's father-in-law. Isn't it easy to apply to him to run a religious university? Of course, this is just a religious university that sells dog meat under the guise of sheep. Because the purpose of religious universities is not to promote God with all their strength, but to promote God and Marin. According to the habits of Taylor and his disciples, when preaching, God is just an introduction to open the topic. Next, there will be a long paragraph of propaganda about Marin's wisdom and bravery. At the end, the glory of the Lord will be preached again. Well, the beginning and the end are to promote God, which fits the theme. But the interruptions were all about Marin's wisdom and bravery. This kind of deception is persisted every week, targeting the whole nation. I don't believe it has no effect. Chapter 4:15 Emergency Military Information. Marin's letter of request was soon sent to Rome. He believed that Julius II, his father-in-law, would not refuse his face. He could not escape the title of a Key 211 religious university directly under the Holy See. Moreover, there would be no problem in proposing Bishop Taylor as the president of the university. In fact, this application was just a formality. Moreover, Julius II would also understandably give Marin the control of the university. However, the university will be named Key Support from the Holy See to increase the authority of the university. Afterwards, Marin found Taylor and explained to him about the establishment of the university. Bishop Taylor hesitated a little. He was reluctant to give up the power of the bishop, and he was a little skeptical that Marin's application would be approved. Marin did not waste words, and told him directly and domineeringly and clearly, "From my expression, His Holiness the Pope will definitely agree, you don't have to worry." In addition, Marin also helped him think about it after realizing that Taylor was worried that he would lose the power of the bishop after becoming the president of the university. Marin allowed Bishop Taylor to set up bishop assistants and preside over the regular work of the East Frisian church during his teaching at the university, and he was only responsible to Taylor. In this way, even if Bishop Taylor was away from the East Frisian church for a long time, he could firmly control the power of the East Frisian church. In this way, Bishop Taylor was at ease as the president of his university. Moreover, Marin gave a very high annual salary of 5,000 gold coins. In this way, Taylor's daily salary reached a terrifying 13.69 gold coins. It is higher than the annual income of ordinary people, 12.16 gold coins. Of course, in order not to stimulate others, this salary was paid to Taylor privately by Marin and would not be made public. Moreover, in order to stimulate Taylor to work hard, Marin also promised directly that if Taylor did a good job, he would be willing to canonize Taylor's illegitimate son Matthew as a hereditary noble. Taylor was not a devout priest, but more like a religious speculator. So, don't expect his character to be good. It's normal to have mistresses and illegitimate children. Marin also knew this. So, he made this promise to stimulate Taylor to fight. Taylor was really stimulated, and patted his chest excitedly, saying that he was willing to go through fire and water for Marin and teach those little liars a lesson. In ancient times, whether it was China or the West, offspring were extremely important. Unlike some modern people, they actually want to be dinks. If it were in ancient times, they would definitely be beaten to death by their parents. There are 3 unfilial acts, and the greatest one is to have no descendants. In order to have a son, Henry VIII divorced several times and married 6 wives. The current king of Bohemia, Vladislav II, has also been married 3 times and finally gave birth to Lajos II. However, the sons of these 2 guys didn't end well. Henry VIII's son died young, and Vladislav II's only son, Lajos II, died in the war with Turkey. Taylor was originally born into a declining noble family. The family could not afford to raise too many children, so they sent him to the monastery to be a priest. In fact, Taylor cares a lot about his family, the Grey family. However, there is no one in this family anymore. Taylor's eldest brother, Joel, has passed away without leaving any offspring, which makes Taylor very sad. Moreover, Taylor has no other brothers. Taylor himself has an illegitimate son, Matthew, but in Europe, illegitimate children cannot be recognized at all. Marin's promise is equivalent to giving his illegitimate son a legitimate origin. How can Taylor not be excited? Originally, Taylor just planned to make Matthew a rich man. After all, he can make a lot of money as a bishop. However, there is a big problem for rich men without status: they cannot be coveted by nobles. Otherwise, the family property will not be protected. Therefore, except for those with backstage, most of the wealthy civilians are very low-key, or simply move to Hanseatic cities such as Lübeck and Hamburg to live. Because the laws there protect civilian wealthy merchants. But now, Marin gave Taylor a chance to make his son a noble, and a hereditary noble. In this way, the Grey family will not only not be extinct. Matthew, as an illegitimate child, cannot publicly use the surnames of various families unless approved by the monarch, but will also have hereditary noble status as protection, which simply makes Taylor overjoyed. Marin asked Taylor gently, "Is your son Matthew already 3 years old?" "Yes, Your Excellency the Duke." Bishop Taylor was a little confused, not knowing why Marin asked this. Matthew's age is not much different from Caesar. Let's do this. When Matthew is older, he will come to the palace to accompany Caesar to study, and then be a servant to Caesar. In this way, Matthew can legitimately get a name and status. My lord. My lord the Duke. Thank you so much. Taylor was so excited that he was a little incoherent. The childhood playmate of the prince, and the title of attendant, it's hard not to be prosperous in the future. However, what Taylor didn't know was that Marin's close subordinates all chose to send their sons to Caesar as younger brothers. Counting it up, Caesar already has a lot of younger brothers. Bishop Taylor's son Matthew can only be regarded as one of them. If there is only one attendant, it will be no problem to be appointed as a marquis and prime minister in the future. But with more younger brothers, it's not so precious. Of course, it won't be bad in the future. After all, it's with the future boss, it's definitely not bad. Europe is not like China, the prince is generally not worried about being deposed, so, following the prince, the future is guaranteed. After sending away the excited Taylor, Schwartz suddenly hurried to Marin's office, and as soon as he came in, he hurriedly said, "Master, urgent military information." Marin was stunned and asked, "What urgent military information?" "The spring plowing has just ended, where is the military information?" "You know, East Frisia is now promoting ox plowing, and 10,000 oxen are imported from Crimea every year. You don't want too many oxen, so spring plowing is over at the end of March. In other countries, spring plowing is not over yet. Who would rashly start a war at this time? The spies we sent out discovered a large-scale military camp in the northwest of the electorate of Brandenburg. It is estimated that there are no less than 20,000 troops in it. These people seem to be the missing 20,000 Swiss mercenaries." Sure enough. Marin stood up suddenly. His inference came true. It seems that their target of attack is Lübeck. Marin looked at the map and made a judgment. But they shouldn't send troops so quickly, right? The spring plowing in the electorate of Brandenburg hasn't ended yet. Yes, young master, but according to intelligence, the spring plowing in Brandenburg started early this year, and the spring plowing in some areas has ended. In those areas where the spring plowing has ended, soldiers and civilians have already gathered in the direction of the Swiss military camp. Just next to the Swiss camp, a new camp with a scale of more than 10,000 people has been built. Moreover, in the Swiss camp, food and supplies have been prepared long ago. It seems that the other side is well prepared. As long as the spring plowing is over and the personnel are in place, they can launch an attack. This is the most important reason for Schwartz's anxiety. Because organizing an army of more than 10,000 people and raising food and grass is a very time-consuming task. Generally, it takes at least 2 or 3 months to raise and transport food and grass for tens of thousands of troops. Because, in the feudal era, due to low productivity, the food in the treasury was generally not enough to support the squandering of the army. Therefore, before the start of the war, the feudal dynasty generally needed to levy taxes and food on the people to meet the needs of the army. However, this process is relatively long. After all, grain collection for war is generally not within the scope of normal taxation. It is a bit difficult and takes time to collect it. But the intelligence brought by Schwartz shows that the food and grass have been prepared in the camp of the electorate of Brandenburg. Therefore, this may have been prepared last year. Now, as long as the spring plowing in the electorate of Brandenburg is over and the personnel are in place, they can immediately march to Lübeck. Moreover, the intelligence from the electorate of Saxony also shows that the country seems to have signs of gathering troops. It can be seen that as soon as the spring plowing is over, the two countries will inevitably attack the city of Lübeck. And once they capture Lübeck, they will definitely attack Hamburg next. Then, Marin is a little unsure. They may attack the Duchy of Schleswig, or they may attack themselves. After all, the other party also knows that their side is the main force of the alliance's army. If you don't defeat yourself, you can't win. Therefore, you must be fully prepared to avoid being caught off guard by the other side. In addition, people must be sent to notify Lübeck and Hamburg. Otherwise, if these two cities are lost, they will inevitably be looted. At that time, the electorate of Brandenburg and the electorate of Saxony, which looted Lübeck and Hamburg, will inevitably make a fortune. And this is what Marin didn't want to see. So Marin ordered, Schwartz, you go and arrange people, hurry up, go to Lübeck and Hamburg, and notify the other side to be prepared to avoid being successfully attacked by the enemy. In addition, notify all military camps to prepare for the expedition. At the same time, start mobilizing all the militias in East Frisia. Remember, it's an emergency mobilization. There's not much time left for us. Yes. After receiving the order, Schwartz immediately turned around and went out to make arrangements. It can be imagined that in the case of insufficient preparation for Lübeck and Hamburg, they will definitely not be able to defend for too long when they encounter tens of thousands of troops attacking the city. Therefore, Marin must quickly gather troops to reinforce. Although Marin also wanted to see Lübeck and Hamburg's strength damaged, he was even more reluctant to see the electorate of Brandenburg and the electorate of Saxony increase their strength by looting these two cities. Therefore, Lübeck and Hamburg still had to be saved. Chapter 4:16 Mahjong Army. Fortunately, the spring plowing in East Frisia has ended, and it is easy for Marin to assemble the army. Even the recruitment of militia is relatively easy. In addition to the original regular army, Marin also recruited 15,000 civilians and 10,000 militiamen. Among them, 5,000 militiamen are old militiamen in East Frisia. The task of these 10,000 militiamen, which existed in the era of the Sexner family, is mainly to defend several main cities and the Ems River defense line to prevent attacks on the western border. As for the southern border, Bishop Conrad has promised to help maintain the security of the southern border of the North Munster region. As for the eastern border, that is, the eastern border of the Oldenburg state, Marin does not care much. Because the city of Oldenburg has 3,000 militiamen from Adler and 3,000 local auxiliary militiamen recruited. The attack is insufficient, but the self-protection is sufficient. Moreover, Marin does not think that the Archbishop of Bremen in the east will go crazy and attack the Oldenburg state. After all, it is a religious country, and it is still very clear about its relationship with the Holy See. It was impossible for Marin to recruit the 10,000 troops of the Duchy of Schleswig to East Frisia. Therefore, Marin sent an order to the garrison of the Duchy of Schleswig to stay put, but recruited a group of militiamen to help guard the city to avoid the enemy's strong attack. Marin estimated that it was impossible for the electorate of Brandenburg and the electorate of Saxony to send troops without reason. Then, the only reason for them to send troops must be to help Denmark. Both in-laws have been dispatched, how can Denmark not send troops? Moreover, when Denmark surrendered, there were more than 10,000 people in southern Sweden. Therefore, if Denmark sends troops this time, the number should be at least 15,000, and possibly more. Therefore, Marin asked Wolf Esprand, who was in charge of the military of the Duchy of Schleswig, to take defense as the main task. As long as several major cities and the safety of the granaries in the city are firmly guarded, the task will be completed. As for Marin, as soon as 10,000 militiamen are in place, he can take the 20,000 troops originally stationed in the Homeland and North Munster area. Now, the 10,000 troops originally stationed in the North Munster area have taken the initiative to move northward, approaching the army camp south of Aurich, preparing to join the 10,000 main forces stationed in East Frisia. In addition, there are 10,000 new English soldiers who are being transported in batches to Wangerog Island and Spikog Island, the easternmost islands of the East Frisian Islands. The development of these two islands is not very sufficient at present, because these two islands are close to the Jever area. In the past, in order to prevent the people in the Jever area who were not under their control from discovering any secrets, they did not develop them carefully. Now, these two islands have become a good place to hide soldiers. Marin plans to use his 20,000 troops as an open force to attract the main force of the enemy. Then, quietly transport these 10,000 English mercenaries to the land and attack the enemy's flank from the side to achieve the goal of defeating the enemy. However, the transportation of 10,000 people is not easy. Therefore, Marin began to mobilize more ships for transporting troops. After thinking about it, Marin decided to quietly transport these 10,000 English mercenaries to the southwest coastal area of the Duchy of Schleswig and hide them quietly. After the war breaks out, go south to the war zone and attack the enemy from the flank. Of course, you can also help the defenders of the Duchy of Schleswig defeat the Danish army first, and then go south. Anyway, there shouldn't be too many problems with the 20,000 main forces brought by Marin. Even if there are many enemies, if you fight a defensive war, the possibility of being quickly defeated by the enemy is extremely low. Because Marin's Spanish phalanx is a large formation that is extremely good at defense. However, when the main force began to gather, Marin looked at the soldiers with neat military appearance below, and almost couldn't help laughing out loud. Why? Because he saw the mahjong mats worn by most of the soldiers. Except for the elite veterans in the first three rows wearing the breastplate and helmet of Maximilian's armor, most of the other soldiers, about 4/5, wore double-layer mahjong mats. The feeling of wearing a double-layer mahjong mat made Marin, who was used to mahjong in later generations, always have the urge to burst out laughing. Fortunately, he remembered that he was a monarch and a commander. So, he forced his face to be tight and held back his laughter. Looking at the soldiers wearing double-layer mahjong mats, a word suddenly popped up in Marin's mind: mahjong legion. Yes, everyone was wearing 2 layers of mahjong mats, and it was too appropriate to describe it as mahjong legion. And what kind of cards are 20,000 troops wearing mahjong mats together? Isn't that 20,000? Marin began to imagine such a scene when Joachim I, Elector of Brandenburg, and Frederick III, Elector of Saxony, rushed over with their army. Marin suddenly turned over an ace comfortably, 20,000. Then, tens of thousands of allied forces of Brandenburg and the Electorate of Saxony were wiped out. Moreover, the mahjong mats worn by Marin's soldiers were not ordinary. Although it was not made of bamboo pieces, it was also made of harder oak. It is very light. A small square mahjong mat of 42 cm * 42 cm weighs only 696 grams, which is less than 0.7 kilograms. Even if it is made into wood pieces and has a skirt that reaches above the knees, the total weight is only 3.5 kilograms. If it is double-layered, it is only 7 kilograms, which is 14 jin. Of course, when wearing double-layer mahjong mat armor, the inner mahjong mat has no skirt, which is also to save weight. In this way, the double-layer mahjong mat actually weighs only 6 kilograms. However, for the outer mahjong mat, Marin had people put a thin iron sheet on the outside of the wood, which increased the total weight to 7 kilograms. Don't underestimate the thin iron sheet on the wood. It is vulnerable to muskets, but it is very effective against cold weapons and arrows. Moreover, this kind of armor is too simple to make. Just let the carpenters make mahjong-shaped oak pieces of the same size and drill holes. Then, give it to women who are good at weaving, string the wood pieces together with hemp ropes, and it becomes a basic mahjong mat protective clothing. Even nailing iron sheets on the outside of the wood is easy. Just cut the iron sheet into the same size as the mahjong piece, and then find a nail to nail it on the surface of the wood piece, and it will be okay. Marin adopted the division of labor and cooperation method, and assigned the processing, weaving of wood pieces, processing and binding of iron sheets to different people, which greatly improved efficiency. This made it easy to complete nearly 16,000 sets of double-layer mahjong mat armor. Now, in the processing workshop, double-layer mahjong mat armor for the 10,000 English mercenaries is being rushed. After it is completed, it will be shipped to the English Legion station for the soldiers to equip. By then, the total force used by Marin on the battlefield will reach 30,000 troops. Well, 30,000 mahjong legion soldiers. It can be imagined that when Marin is fighting with his opponent on the battlefield, he first plays a 20,000, and the enemy doesn't think anything. Suddenly, Marin quietly throws out a 10,000 from the side, which may become the decisive force to change the situation and win. This tactic is not complicated, and many people have used it in history. It is nothing more than attracting the enemy's attention head-on and undermining the enemy's morale. Then, a surprise force suddenly rushed out from the side to attack the enemy's flank. Although the routine is old, it works. Chapter 4:17, Chariot Battalion. In addition to 30,000 regular soldiers, Marin also specially selected 5,000 outstanding people who performed well in military training from 15,000 militiamen to form a chariot camp. These people were also covered with mahjong mats and motorcycle helmets. Of course, there is no iron sheet nailed outside the mahjong mat. Their task is to push Udayo's chariot and walk in front and on the side of the army. There are 3 sharp spearheads in front of Udayo's chariot, firmly nailed in front of the car to guard against the enemy's impact. In particular, the impact of enemy cavalry. Once encountering the enemy, the 5,000 chariot soldiers in the chariot camp will immediately drill holes in the ground with a chisel. Then, insert the 2 rear foot brackets of the chariot into the chiseled holes. In this way, after the 2 rear foot brackets of the chariot are inserted into the soil, the entire chariot will be fixed in place and will not be easily knocked over. When the enemy cavalry rushes up, the 3 spearheads in front of the chariot will string the enemy soldiers into barbecue. Even if a warhorse crashes into it, it will be pierced and become a roasted horse posture. When a row of Udayo's one-wheeled chariots with their rear legs inserted into the mud are lying across the front of the formation, the enemy will find it difficult to charge. Because the front part of this row of chariots is full of sharp spears, whoever rushes will be stabbed to death. What? You said you want to push these spears away? Sorry, they are not held by people, but fixed on the chariot. Unless you cut off the spears, you can't push them away. Of course, it should be pointed out that these spears are more than 4 meters long. Therefore, they cannot be fixed in front of the car at ordinary times. Otherwise, the car will not be able to drive properly. The rear vehicle cannot be pushed faster, otherwise, the person in front will be accidentally stabbed to death. Therefore, the solution given by Marin is that the 3 spears are all movable. Usually, they are inserted vertically into the car, like flagpoles. Once the battle array was formed, the charioteers would quickly pull down the upright spears, insert them in front of the chariot, and lock them, so that the spears were fixed in front of the chariot and pointed forward all the time. The chariot body, connected to the handle of the cart, was more than 2 meters long in total. If the spears were stuck in front of the chariot, the total length would exceed 6 meters. And 6 meters is the length of the longest spear of the Swiss mercenaries. In this way, the total length of the chariot and the spears exceeded 6 meters, which was longer than the Swiss spears. The Swiss would never think of taking advantage of the length of the spears and standing in front of the chariot to poke the soldiers of Marin behind the chariot. This was when they were defending. If they were to attack, it would be easy. The charioteers directly pulled up the rear leg bracket of the chariot and pushed the chariot forward. The chariot and spear combination of more than 6 meters in length, plus the kinetic energy of the chariot itself, slammed into the enemy fiercely, and even the most combative Swiss mercenaries could not bear it. Either give in or die or get injured. But on the battlefield, the battle formation is so dense that people are almost crowded, how can you give in? So, at that time, you can only fight each other to death, either you die or I die. But how can a person holding a spear hit a chariot with 3 spears inserted? Although the Swiss spear is also 6 meters long, it is impossible for the Swiss to hold the bottom of the spear with both hands and use the nearly 6 meter long part in front to poke the enemy. In order to balance, the Swiss often hold the middle and rear part of the 6 meter long spear. Even if the arm strength is good, you have to hold the last 2 meters. In fact, the part in front of the body is generally only 4 meters or even less than 4 meters long. In other words, although the Swiss spear is 6 meters long, the distance from the spearhead to the chest of the spearman is generally only about 4 meters, and the full 6 meter length of the spear cannot be fully utilized. If it is longer, the spearman will not be able to hold the spear. But Udayo's chariot is different. Although the spear is only 4 meters long, it can be inserted into a wheelbarrow with an overall length of more than 2 meters, and it has a century length of more than 6 meters. Moreover, unlike people holding spears, the chariot soldiers can hold the long handle and push the cart to hit the enemy. The distance from the chest of the chariot soldier holding the end of the handle to the spearhead is almost 6 meters, which is longer than the Swiss distance. When stabbing each other, the Swiss will find that before they stab the opponent's chest, the 3 spears on the opponent's car have stabbed their chest. After testing, using Udayo's chariot, plus the extended spear and the enemy's spearman stabbing, it is definitely advantageous. The only problem is that Marin does not have so many qualified chariot soldiers. Before, because it was a test period. Therefore, Marin only trained 100 chariot soldiers to observe the effect. Now, the effect is out. However, Marin had not had time to recruit and train the chariot troops. The war was about to start, so Marin had no time to train the chariot troops. So Marin made a decision, to use the 100 skilled chariot soldiers who participated in the test as officers, and to train the newly recruited 5,000 chariot soldiers while marching. Anyway, it takes a few days to get from Aurich to Lübeck. It just so happened that along the way, the 100 experienced old drivers, oh no. Old chariot soldiers took the opportunity to train the young and strong men who had just been recruited into the chariot troops. The specific training items mainly include quickly drilling holes in the ground to place the rear foot brackets of the chariot, and quickly pulling out the 3 originally upright spears from the car, placing them at the front of the car, and fixing them. In addition, there are trainings to push the cart forward and collide with the enemy hard. These items seem simple, but they are actually not easy. In particular, you have to line up 5,000 wheelbarrows tightly in a row without giving the enemy any gaps. Moreover, digging holes for the rear foot supports of the wheelbarrow also requires certain skills. When riding a horse, you need to measure the distance between the 2 holes. Otherwise, there will be an embarrassing situation where one of the 2 rear foot supports of the wheelbarrow can be inserted into the hole, but the other cannot. Pulling down the originally erected spear and taking it to the front of the car to install and fix it may seem simple, but it is not easy to complete it smoothly during wartime. Because, facing the aggressive enemy, many people will be flustered, make mistakes in the chaos, and mess things up. Therefore, the task of those old car soldiers and old drivers is to train the rookies to be extremely calm. Even when facing the enemy's charge, they must insist on inserting the 3 spears in place before they can climb back to the back of the car body and wait for the enemy to attack or take the initiative to attack. If there is a month or so, these are all trivial matters. However, now it is very close to the outbreak of the war, and it will not take more than half a month before the war. Therefore, the old driver has to work hard to lead the new driver. Otherwise, they will miss the war. If the combat effectiveness of the chariot battalion composed of 5,000 new soldiers cannot be used in this battle, then all of Marin's previous preparations and efforts will be in vain. Therefore, the training tasks of those chariot soldiers are very tight these days. They must master the combat skills of skilled chariot soldiers in the shortest time possible so that they can shine in the next war. Marin publicly promised that as long as they perform well in this battle, serfs can be promoted to nobles and have a noble status from then on. Most of the chariot soldiers in the chariot battalion were born as serfs, so they were naturally moved by Marin's promise. After all, exchanging military merit for birth is the best way for the lower class to change their destiny. Therefore, everyone's enthusiasm for training is also relatively high. Chapter 4:18, The Chaos in Lübeck. Just as Marin began to gather his army and prepare to march eastward, the cities of Lübeck and Hamburg were in chaos. After all, they suddenly received news that they were about to be attacked. Who wouldn't panic? What made the people of Lübeck and Hamburg even more nervous was that 20,000 of the troops attacking them were the famous Swiss mercenaries. A person's reputation is like a tree's shadow. The famous Swiss mercenaries became famous in Europe through battles such as the Battle of Nancy, where they killed the bold Charles. Other countries have thought about hiring Swiss mercenaries for a long time, but France interfered more. Therefore, the main force of Swiss mercenaries generally serves France. For example, after supporting Prince Philip of the Principality of Clever to become the Grand Master of the Teutonic Knights, Marin suggested that the Teutonic Kingdom recruit a large number of Swiss mercenaries, but was stopped by the French. Because the French were fighting against Italian mercenaries at the time, the main force of Swiss mercenaries needed to give priority to serving the largest customer, France, so Philip did not hire many Swiss mercenaries. This time, Denmark was able to ask Frederick III, Elector of Saxony, and Joachim I, Elector of Brandenburg, to hire 20,000 Swiss mercenaries, which was a rare opportunity. Because, since the last defeat to the Spanish in Italy, France has been recuperating and has no plans to return to Italy. In addition, Frederick III, Elector of Saxony, has a high prestige in the Holy Roman Empire, and the Swiss also give him face. In fact, Frederick III is not only the Elector of Saxony, but also the leader of the great nobles who united to oppose Maximilian I's actual unification of Germany. The Swiss were originally mortal enemies of the Habsburg family. Facing the enemy of their enemy, they regarded the Elector of Saxony as a friend. Moreover, Frederick III also told them that their main opponent this time was Marin, the number 1 lackey of the Habsburg family. So the Swiss made this big order. The city of Lübeck was very close to the northwest corner of Brandenburg mentioned by the messenger sent by Marin, so the Lübeck Grand Speaker Tagfact immediately sent people to rush across the Duchy of Mecklenburg to the border area for investigation. Then, they really saw a large area of military camps hidden in remote villages. Obviously, Marin's warning was correct and he didn't say anything nonsense. At this moment, the Lübeck people panicked. Why? The main reason was that there was not enough time. If the news was received earlier, the Lübeck people would have enough time to send people with money to the southern part of Germany to hire those old mercenary groups. As long as the number of people was enough and it was a city defense battle, the Lübeck people could hold on. However, according to Marin's intelligence, the enemy's army had begun to assemble and might launch an attack within 10 or 20 days. Where can I find mercenaries in such a short time? You know, sending people to the south to hire those mercenaries, back and forth, takes at least 2 or 3 months. After all, in addition to the time it takes for Lübeck to send people, the hired mercenary group also needs a lot of time to assemble and travel. Especially the journey, from the south to Lübeck, it takes at least 2 months. The main reason is that the army of this era marches too slowly. After all, everyone marches on foot and has to carry heavy loads. However, according to intelligence, the electorate of Brandenburg and the electorate of Saxony, as well as the 20,000 terrible Swiss mercenaries, will inevitably attack Lübeck in a dozen days at the fastest and more than a month at the slowest. Therefore, Lübeck can't hold on until the mercenaries arrive. It is precisely because of this realization that the dignitaries in Lübeck suddenly panicked, and they were in a mess, not knowing how to deal with it. At present, there are only about 3,000 mercenaries in Lübeck, hired by the people of Lübeck, guarding the city of Lübeck and the eastern half of the Duchy of Holstein, which is assigned to Lübeck. However, according to intelligence, the enemy has a large number of troops. In addition to the 20,000 Swiss mercenaries, there are estimated to be 10,000 to 20,000 local troops. In other words, the total number of troops on the opposite side is at least 30,000 to 40,000 people. 3,000 people against 30,000 to 40,000, even if the people of Lübeck are fools, they know that the situation is not good. Therefore, they appear to be in a panic, and the whole city is in chaos. In addition, Grand Speaker Tagfact believes that the enemy will definitely bring a lot of artillery to attack the city if they gather so many troops. However, the city of Lübeck has not yet replaced the all-iron city gate, and it is difficult to withstand the bombardment. However, it seems a little too late to cast a few all-iron city gates now. Therefore, after thinking again and again, Grand Speaker Tagfact decided to cover the outside of the Lübeck city gate with 2 or 3 layers of iron sheets to prevent bombardment. This time, the iron sheets used by the Lübeck people are the most common iron sheets, neither galvanized white iron sheets nor tinplate iron sheets. In other words, the corrosion resistance of these iron sheets is definitely not good, even if they are covered on the city gates, they will not last long. In the long rainy season, the iron sheets are very easy to rust and break. However, the people of Lübeck can't care so much now. Although the bare iron sheets are indeed not resistant to rust. However, it will take a long time for those iron sheets to rust and break. But after covering the city gates with iron sheets, it is enough to resist the enemy's artillery fire in a short period of time. After all, Speaker Tagfact believes that this war will not last too long. At least, during the siege of Lübeck, these ordinary iron sheets will not rust and break. With the iron sheets covering the outside, and the enemy's lack of enough heavy artillery, it is not so easy for the enemy to damage the city gates. As for the serious shortage of soldiers defending the city, the Lübeck parliament has no choice but to mobilize the citizens. There are also many civilians in Lübeck. They are definitely not the opponents of the regular army in face-to-face battles. But relying on the city walls, it can also take on some defensive work. In addition, although the army of Lübeck is not good, it relies heavily on mercenaries. However, the navy is still very strong. There are thousands of young and strong sailors on the thousands of ocean-going merchant ships in Lübeck alone. Therefore, Tagfact and the Parliament of Lübeck finally made a decision to suspend the departure of any merchant ships, and the young and strong sailors on the ships must also go ashore, carry weapons, and assist in the defense of Lübeck. In this way, Lübeck can instantly increase thousands of young and strong people. Moreover, many of these young and strong people have participated in the war against Denmark and can be regarded as half-sailors. It is also good to equip them with weapons to defend the city. However, this decision was strongly opposed by many ship owners. After all, this affects their business. However, Speaker Tagfact and the Lübeck Parliament believe that if the city of Lübeck is broken, the consequences will be terrible. After all, there is too much wealth in the city of Lübeck. Therefore, they would rather sacrifice some of their current trade interests to protect the safety of the city of Lübeck. Compared with the safety of Lübeck, the trade benefits are insignificant. Even if there is a commercial breach of contract, Lübeck can afford to pay that little money. Chapter 419, The Danish Army. Just as Marin's army was ready to set off, the spies sent to Denmark also sent back important intelligence. Denmark has prepared 20,000 troops near the Duchy of Schleswig on the Jutland Peninsula. At present, Denmark's 20,000 troops are gathering, and they can raid the Duchy of Schleswig from the north as soon as they are assembled. In addition, after learning from the lessons of the last war, the Danes kept 10,000 troops in Copenhagen this time to avoid repeating the mistakes of the last time. The news came from Copenhagen, from the residence of the Danish minister. Before, when arranging the group of spies who were Danish themselves, Mikkel, who was originally the Prime Minister of Denmark, made great efforts. Relying on the influence of being the Prime Minister of Denmark for many years, Mikkel privately asked someone to send this group of spies to the residences of several Danish ministers as servants. Those Danish ministers naturally have the right to access those secrets. In this way, finally by chance, a spy overheard a minister's conversation, confirmed the news, and sent it back quickly. According to intelligence, this army of 20,000 people is a new army composed entirely of Danish farmers, and training began a year ago. They are a group of relatively strong and tall people selected from the people by the Danish King Hans. Moreover, they are trained by 50 Swiss mercenary instructors. Under the training of Swiss mercenaries, these 20,000 Danish soldiers all use 6-meter-long Swiss spears and learn Swiss skills and tactics. They are a copycat version of Swiss mercenaries. Although this Danish army looks very powerful, Marin knows that this army is a soft persimmon. Why? Because the 20,000 Danish troops seem to be very powerful and have become Swiss. However, these 20,000 people are not barbaric and fierce Swiss mountain people, but Danish farmers. In terms of the personal qualities of the soldiers, they are far inferior to the Swiss. Moreover, although this army has been trained for a whole year, the basic military skills should be laid. However, this is a group of recruits who have never been on the battlefield. Although they are vigorous during training, they are easily timid on the battlefield, especially when they go to the battlefield for the first time. In particular, they are a cold weapon unit. Unlike the Swiss mercenaries, Marin's army also has many recruits. However, on the battlefield, Marin's army has a lot of muskets. Even if the soldiers are on the battlefield for the first time, after the musketeers have given the enemy multiple rounds of attacks, the morale of the enemy will drop, while the morale of our army will rise. After all, it is the enemy who is killed and wounded. Moreover, the huge sound of gunfire can also divert the attention of the soldiers and cover up some nervous emotions. In particular, the enemy does not have a musket yet, and the two sides are not shooting at each other. In the case of crushing the opponent, it is easier for the recruits to get through the psychological barrier of their first battlefield career. But the Danish army is different. They learn from Swiss mercenaries. Although the skills and tactics are relatively advanced, the Swiss mercenaries' spear-stabbing tactics require great courage. Don't look at them when they are training to poke scarecrows, they are very imposing, but when they are on the battlefield, the problem comes. The enemy is not a scarecrow, and it will not be placed there for you to poke. When you poke the enemy with a spear, the enemy will also poke you. When a new soldier goes to the battlefield for the first time, he will be very nervous when he stabs the enemy with a spear. Therefore, when the Swiss fight, the first 3 rows are all veterans, and the new soldiers are placed in the back as reserve forces. Why? Because the veterans are used to fighting, and they are not easy to collapse even if there are large casualties. If the Swiss put the new soldiers in the front row, it will easily cause collapse if the battle fails. But the problem is, intelligence shows that this team of 20,000 people is actually composed entirely of new recruits, without any veterans. So, Marin began to come up with other ideas. After thinking it over again and again, Marin gave an order Sakara, his 10,000 troops not to go south first, but to go north, hide their whereabouts, and cooperate with Wolf Esbern to get rid of the 20,000 Danish troops first. Schwartz was a little puzzled, Master, but Sakara's 10,000 people are also new recruits. I know, so I chose this Danish army for them as the first baptism on the battlefield. When the battle with the Danish army is over, they will be veterans who have seen blood. Then how should we do it specifically? According to intelligence, the Danish army's primary target of attack is the city of Ribe in the northwest of the Duchy of Schleswig. It is also the place where the Treaty of Ribe was signed, which is of great political significance to Denmark. Send someone to notify Wolf Esbern to gather heavy troops in the city of Ribe for defense. After the Danish army arrives, let Wolf's army not go out of the city for a decisive battle, but instead use a battle to defend the city to dampen the morale of the Danish army. When the morale of the Danes drops, let Sakara sneak attack the Danish army's camp at night. Well, remember to inform Sakara to practice more night battles during this period. Also, make sure they are hidden well and don't let the Danish scouts see them. So, they need to hide in a remote village far south of Ribe city that is not close to the main road. Understood. Also, send a group of chariot instructors to support Sakara. And send a group of carpenters to help convert wheelbarrows into chariots. There should be a lot of wheelbarrows in the Duchy of Schleswig now. Let those carpenters help Sakara convert 2,000 wheelbarrows for combat. Under Marin's vigorous promotion, East Frisia and the Duchy of Schleswig have made a large number of Chinese-style wheelbarrows for transportation. Therefore, it is relatively easy to collect 2,000 wheelbarrows from the public. Then, send a skilled carpenter to modify the wheelbarrow and install 3 spears, so that it can be used as a simple chariot. Moreover, it is very convenient that these wheelbarrows can not only be used as chariots, but also used to transport supplies. After all, a Chinese wheelbarrow can pull 500 or 600 pounds of goods, and it is obviously a waste to put only 3 spears. Therefore, it can also be used to transport military supplies such as food. Of course, in order to save the physical energy of the chariot soldiers, generally only 100 or 200 pounds of supplies are placed on the car. According to Marin's arrangement, the plate armor of the first 3 rows of soldiers was first placed on the wheelbarrow during the march, and the chariot soldiers helped to pull it. Wait until before the battle, and then take it off the wheelbarrow and put it on, and then face the enemy in battle. In this way, the veterans in the first 3 rows saved a lot of physical strength and could be more durable on the battlefield. As for the mahjong mat battle robe, because the total weight is not as heavy as the plate armor, it is usually worn by the soldiers themselves. According to Marin's plan, Sakara will take 10,000 English mercenaries and cooperate with Wolf Esbjörn's Schleswig Duchy garrison to deal with Denmark's 20,000 recruits first. In fact, the original 10,000 garrisons of the Duchy of Schleswig were all veterans, no worse than the 20,000 Danish recruits. However, in order to train Sakara's 10,000 English recruits, Marin asked them to fight a defensive battle first to consume the morale of the Danish recruits. Finally, Sakara's army will deal with them. In this way, not only can the Danish army be caught off guard and easily collapse, but also these English recruits can be thoroughly bloodied and exercise their courage. Once the Danish army is resolved, Wolf Esbjörn and Sakara can withdraw most of the troops to the south to support the battlefield in the south. After all, the southern battlefield must be very stressful. After all, the 20,000 Swiss mercenaries here are all veterans of hundreds of battles, which are not comparable to the 20,000 Danish recruits. In addition, there are the armies of the Electorate of Saxony and the Electorate of Brandenburg. Together, they are estimated to be more than 40,000, or even 50,000, and they are all elite. Even if Marin leads 20,000 main forces, he can only guarantee that he will not fail. It is a bit difficult to defeat the opponent. Chapter 420, The Poisonous Commander in Front of the Battlefield. Marin didn't understand why Denmark chose to use 20,000 new soldiers to join the war. Why? Because it's best for pure new soldiers to fight with the wind for the first time. Otherwise, it's easy to collapse if they fight against the wind right away. However, the second piece of intelligence that was delivered solved Marin's doubts. It turned out that King Hans of Denmark was frightened by the fall of Copenhagen and the humiliating treaty he was forced to sign. Therefore, while considering sending troops, King Hans gave priority to his own safety. If Copenhagen falls again, it will be a lot of fun. Maybe a large piece of land will be cut off. Therefore, King Hans placed 2,000 of the original 12,000 veterans of Denmark in Oslo, the capital of the Kingdom of Norway. The other 10,000 main forces were all placed in Copenhagen. The reason for this choice, in addition to the fact that King Hans became timid, the loss of sea power was also the main reason why King Hans made such a choice. Because, in the last war, the Danish navy was completely plundered by Lübeck and Hamburg, causing Denmark, the original maritime power, to completely lose its navy. Not only that, Lübeck and Hamburg also sent fleets to Sweden across the Øresund Strait to monitor Denmark and prevent the Danish navy from rising again. But Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark, is right beside the Øresund Strait. In the case of losing sea power, if Copenhagen does not leave enough troops to garrison, it will be easy for the fleets of Lübeck and Hamburg to fight a landing battle and a city-breaking battle. At that time, Denmark will still be in big trouble. Therefore, King Hans finally chose to use 20,000 new recruits to participate in the war. Moreover, these 20,000 new recruits were all trained by Swiss mercenary instructors, and after a year of training, they must have enough combat effectiveness. Moreover, according to intelligence, the Danish strategy is to keep troops in place in the early stage. After the coalition forces of Brandenburg and Saxony besieged Lübeck, the Danes estimated that the 10,000 troops of the Duchy of Schleswig would be divided and sent south to rescue. After all, there are too many coalition forces in the south. According to the intelligence from the Danish nobles, the total number of the coalition forces in the south this time is about 50,000. In addition to 20,000 Swiss mercenaries, the electorate of Brandenburg and the electorate of Saxony each sent 15,000 soldiers. Together with 30,000 civilians, there are as many as 80,000 people. With such a huge army, the Danes believe that Marin is short of troops and must transfer troops from the Duchy of Schleswig to the south for reinforcement. At that time, Denmark's 20,000 troops will suddenly attack the Duchy of Schleswig. With the remaining troops of the Duchy of Schleswig, it should not be the opponent of the 20,000 troops. It must be said that this strategy of the Danes is not wrong under normal circumstances. However, he still underestimated the combat effectiveness of Marin's army. Moreover, the Danes believe that Marin can only bring out 12,000 people out of the 20,000 troops in Marin's homeland. After all, the homeland must also be guarded. However, they ignored the existence of the East Frisian militia. Miscalculation in these two aspects led the Danes to make a wrong decision, to use 20,000 new soldiers to attack the Duchy of Schleswig, which was garrisoned by 10,000 elite veterans. After receiving the second piece of intelligence, Marin was immediately happy. So he decided to use the trick against him. Marin wrote a secret letter to Wolf Esprand, ordering him to recruit 8,000 civilians in the Duchy of Schleswig. Then, make 8,000 white-bottomed black cross vests. The intention of doing this is to let these 8,000 civilians pretend to be the main force and swagger to go south to rescue Lübeck. After the war started, if the Danes knew that 8,000 of the 10,000 troops of the Duchy of Schleswig went to reinforce Lübeck, they would definitely not miss this good opportunity. At that time, the 20,000 Danish troops would definitely take the opportunity to raid the northern cities of the Duchy of Schleswig, such as the city of Ribe. At that time, the opportunity for war came. Then, the third piece of intelligence came from Copenhagen. This information shocked Marin. Why? Because the person who sent the information was Jim, a royal spy under Marin. After Jim bought the poison, Cantrera, from Spain, Mikkel quickly arranged Jim to be an attendant in a general's home through his personal relationship when he was the Prime Minister of Denmark. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that this time Denmark sent troops. This general is the adjutant of the Danish coach. Moreover, the Danish coach is the Danish Crown Prince Christian, who is the target of Jim's poisoning. Jim's information is to ask Marin when to start. Marin thought about it and gave an answer: start on the battlefield. As for the specific time, it was a few days after the Danish army besieged the city of Ribe. Why choose this time period? Because, at that time, the English legion led by Sakara could almost reach the vicinity of Ribe. If the Danish coach suddenly died of poison at this time, the morale of the army would definitely be in chaos. At that time, the defenders in the city and the 10,000 English mercenaries outside the city will take the opportunity to launch an attack, and there will be no worries about not being able to destroy the 20,000 Danish troops. Of course, the drug must be administered in advance. Because Cantrela is a chronic poison that will not take effect until a week later. Therefore, before the Danish army arrives in Ribe, the time for poisoning must be calculated. Then, a few days after the battle to defend Ribe city began, Prince Christian suddenly died of poison. The Danish army must be in chaos. However, Marin emphasized in his reply that Jim must escape from the barracks before Prince Christian's poisoning and bring accurate news to Sakara. Moreover, before escaping from the Danish barracks, Jim needs to, inadvertently, reveal to the people around him that he can speak Swedish. In this way, as long as Jim escapes, the Danes will infer from these details that it was the Swedes who poisoned Prince Christian. At that time, let the Danes and Swedes fight. Anyway, Marin will never admit that he poisoned the Danish crown prince. After all, this kind of thing is too bad, so it is better to let the Swedes take the blame. Anyway, the Swedes and the Danes have a very bad relationship over sovereignty and independence, and it is not wrong for them to have hatred for each other. Putting the blame on the Swedes will make outsiders believe it. Moreover, Marin had previously left clues in Spain to make people believe that the Swedes had indeed visited Caesar Borgia. Then, based on this information, the Danes will also get the inference that it was indeed the Swedes who poisoned Prince Christian. In this way, the Swedes can't even get rid of the blame. At that time, let the Danes and the Swedes fight. No, there may be no time for fighting. Because once the Brandenburg and Saxon coalition forces are defeated, Marin will not give Denmark a chance, and will take the army to Denmark, and then tear off a large piece of meat from Denmark. It's just that others are killing generals in front of the battle. Is he considered a poison commander in front of the battle?